Embark on a career journey that transcends boundaries and impacts communities. Join the state of Nebraska, where innovation meets purpose and your contributions shape the future. As a valued member of our team, discover a broad range of opportunities spanning from public service to cutting-edge technology. Be a part of something bigger, where your skills make a difference, your growth is fostered, and your commitment to excellence is celebrated. With hundreds of positions waiting to be filled, Nebraska State Government opens doors to fulfilling careers. Explore these opportunities at statejobs.nebraska.gov. Click on the Find a State Job link and take the first step towards your next great career in the Cornhusker State. This is the Good Life, Great Careers podcast, your gateway to a world of career opportunities within Nebraska State Government. In each episode, we present a different state public servant as our honored guest, offering them a platform to share their unique journey in public service. Join us as they provide valuable insights, offer tips, and perhaps unveil exciting opportunities within their state agency.
Welcome to the Good Life, Great Careers podcast. My name is Brian Civic, and I am the Director of Workforce Training and Development for the state of Nebraska. I'm joined again by my co-host, Caitlin Betts, who is the Director of Talent Acquisition. Our guest today is Lieutenant Monty Lovelace from the Nebraska State Patrol, where he serves as the Director of the Nebraska Information Analysis Center, or the NIAC, and the Nebraska State Patrol Technical Crimes Division. Lieutenant Lovelace has served with the Nebraska State Patrol for 24 years in various capacities, including traffic enforcement, investigative services, internal affairs, and carrier enforcement. In his current role, he engages with law enforcement and private sector partners across Nebraska, sharing threat-related information to help keep Nebraskans safe. Additionally, he leads efforts to combat online threats against children, serving as the commander of the Nebraska Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. Lieutenant Lovelace, thank you for joining us today, taking time out of your very busy schedule. Reading this, it's pretty impressive, and your career journey and everything that you've done in your career with the Nebraska State Patrol. I want to thank you for your service and, again, for your time today. I want to start off by just handing it over to you and just share with your listeners anything you'd like to share about yourself.
Well, thank you, Brian and Caitlin, for the opportunity to come in and speak today. I'm honored to be here, and I'm one of the Nebraska employees that takes great pride in what I've done. It's humbling to sit here and think about what the last 24 years has brought, and a lot of the opportunities that I've had it's because of the Nebraska State Patrol. I was fortunate to get on the patrol and start in 2001, and it was an interesting time frame to become an officer because during week 5 of the academy, we were standing in the lunch line, and I can remember the TAC officers of what we called our basically our drill instructors back then. They were acting different. They were acting somber. Something was going on, and while I was standing there in the lunch line, that was the day that we were attacked. 9/11 happened, and we learned that the planes had hit the towers. And little did I know, I hadn't been a cop yet, but little did I know, policing changed that day, and it really changed the way we looked at information and how we gathered information and how we shared that. Understanding what that experience was then, and then where I'm at now as a director of the Nebraska Information Analysis Center, it's really quite ironic that the position I'm in now started its roots, or is rooted in 9/11. And I can talk to you about that here in just a little bit. But to talk about how I got there, I was fortunate enough to get stationed in the traffic division out of Auburn, Nebraska. Auburn was a great place to live. It was a great place to start for me. A lot of great people down there. And that's the nice part about being a cop in the state of Nebraska. You know, there's a lot of cops around the country that have quit, certainly in different cities that may not have been as supportive of law enforcement. But I can tell you, having been on 24 years, Nebraskans are great to law enforcement. Our governors and our senators have always been more than benevolent to us. It's a good place to work. So I always felt welcome down in the Auburn area. I actually started my career in Johnson for a year and then bought a house north of Auburn and spent about 10 years there. And during that time, the patrol afforded me a few opportunities. Number one, to get my feet wet in the traffic division, but also I was able to move up and become a criminal investigator and investigate other types of crimes in the area other than just, traffic violations and things like that. One other experience that the patrol encouraged me to do was become more involved in public service beyond what I was already doing. So I served almost two terms as a county commissioner for Nemaha County. So I was able to gain some budgeting experience that really helped me understand kind of what our leaders go through on the state side of things too. Yeah. So it was good for me to do that. I spent a full term and then just over half of a term before I was able to get promoted to sergeant out in western Nebraska as the criminal sergeant. And while I was out there, there was a need for the development of an Internet Crimes Against Children program. So my lieutenant out there at the time, also a diehard Nebraskan and loves kids. Her name was Monica Bartling. She really encouraged me to just take off and direct the program however I wanted to. So a couple of things that we did, I focused on online predators, online people that were out there trying to hook up with kids under the age of 18. I focused on rooting out individuals that were possessing, distributing, and manufacturing child pornography. And we also were able to get the technology needed to start examining cell phones out in western Nebraska, which really helped with not only the child-related cases, but also the just overall cases. Because as we all know, especially now, about every aspect of a crime or most crimes have some type of digital technology associated with it. And I've always said there is no higher calling for a law enforcement officer than the protection of our children. So yep. I really felt a high calling for what I was doing and loved every minute of it, working with individuals to try to get individuals off the street that were hurting kids. But, as life went, I realized that it was time to move on from that. So I had an opportunity to move back to the state, I had an opportunity to move back to Lincoln to take over the Internal Affairs Division. Okay. And I did that just shy of a couple of years. Spent a little bit of time in the Carrier Enforcement Division, but in 2019, I was asked to serve as the interim director of the NIAC and also as the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force Commander. I took a brief break from being the full-time NIAC director and just focus on internet crimes. But then in 2001, I became the full-time director and then maintained my role as the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force Commander and the leader of our Technical Crimes Unit too. So there's almost 24 years in there of stories to talk about. Yeah. And obviously I don't want to take up our whole time on just my introduction. So I'll stop there. And if there's any part of what I said that sparked questions or anything else you want to know, I'd be glad to answer those.
Yeah. I mean, it's an amazing journey. And the service, again, thank you for your service that you've provided to our citizens. And I couldn't agree more about keeping our children safe. I have 3 children myself. And so very thankful for that. Just to back up a little bit, so you are a native Nebraskan, is that correct?
Actually, I'm not. Okay. I grew up in western Missouri, in a little town called Adrian. Okay. And my wife grew up in a little town called Malta Bend, Missouri, over in the central part of the state near Columbia. And okay. We both met while we were getting our degrees at Missouri Western State University and St. Joe. Okay. And I always wanted to be a state trooper. Yeah. Even since being a little boy. In fact, there was there's a video of us kids playing cops and robbers, and I was of course, I was the colonel. And during the part of our discussion with the other officers at the table, I told everyone to get to work, and I was going to go back to my mansion. Well, little did I know that law enforcement wasn't quite that elaborate as far as the lifestyle goes. There are no mansions, but I will say that law enforcement has afforded me a great life.
Yeah.
And a life of service, a life of feeling good about what you do, and you can make a pretty good living doing it. So when I was in college, I didn't care where it was at. I just wanted to be a trooper. And I obviously my heart was in Missouri, but I was willing to go anywhere. So I applied with Missouri, Kansas, and Nebraska, and actually was going back and forth on job offers between Kansas and Nebraska, and ended up settling on Nebraska. And there was a lot of different reasons. Nebraska, under Governor Johans, had just gotten a little bit of a pay raise. I also had family in Falls City.
Okay.
So, Nebraska, even though I didn't grow up here, it certainly felt like home. And obviously it does now, because I've spent more time up here now than I did my time growing up in Missouri. So that's kind of how we got up here is, Nebraska offered a good opportunity. The people were nice. I had family, and everything worked out. And, in order to be in law enforcement, and I shouldn't say in order to be in law enforcement, it greatly helps when you have some type of faith. And I've always put my faith in God through Jesus, and I've always felt that anything that I've ever done through prayer and consideration has always worked out, and I really do feel that that's why it ended up in Nebraska. And I won't turn this into a sermon. That's not the point. But the point is that I do feel that success is rooted in faith and an understanding that there is a higher calling for what we do. And I have no doubt that I was put in Nebraska for a reason. And there are several stories that I can go through where I really felt that reason illustrated in many different ways. But we've been blessed to come up here. It worked out for my wife. She graduated a couple years behind me. I was able to get established and buy a house. And, she got out of college in late May of 2003, and we got married in June 2003, and we hit the ground running. She got on with the Department of Corrections, and we've been happy state workers for ever since. So
I'm glad we won out over Kansas.
Same.
Yeah. It's worked out really well up here.
Yeah.
Your career is very impressive, as Brian said, and it's interesting to hear kind of your journey starting out in traffic and now being the director of, is it NIAC?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the way.
Did you have a background in technical or IT or anything, or how did you learn? How did this patrol help you?
Absolutely not. And I would still say that I don't consider myself a technical person. I consider myself a person that's willing to listen and to learn. We've got people on the patrol that I think were born with a computer in their hands. I was fortunate that when I got into internet crimes, there was a great task force commander at the State Patrol. He's still there now. His name's Lieutenant Eric Jones. He oversees our criminal division. He is one of those guys that was born with a technical brain. And when I was really starting to get into the operational side of working internet crimes against children, I called him a lot. And he helped me in drafting search warrants. He helped me, understand how to do chatting legally without getting into legal problems, with talking with individuals online. He was able to provide training. I trained for a week in Washington, D.C. at the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children to learn how to engage potential bad guys online and do it, legally. So the foundation of what I was able to understand really started with him and his leadership. And I've been been grateful and being able to surround myself with people that are just off the chart smart. And I think that is so important in any fashion of leadership, is to surround yourself with people that know more than you do. And, I've got 3 sergeants right now in our criminal division, in our technical crimes division. Eric Aho, who oversees our computer crime lab. Peter Rutherford, who he's working operationally with our internet crimes against children task force members, and then his own team working cyber tips. And then Sergeant Nate Maliski, who is working on the cyber side of things, knows an incredible amount about cybersecurity. It's getting a team together like that you can trust to go out and follow through with the mission of what we're trying to get accomplished. Everything that I do now is administrative. I often tell people, make sure that you're ready to promote when it's time to promote, because you typically get further away from the fun stuff when you start to promote. I will say, though, that even though my job is primarily administrative, it is still a pleasure to come to work and still a pleasure to network with these individuals, because they're truly doing God's work. And it's impressive to see what they do. Just yesterday, we had a case that an individual met one of our officers, and charges are going to be forthcoming. We've got several search warrants that are coming up in the next week or the next month for individuals that are possessing, distributing, manufacturing child pornography. So in addition to those sergeants, we've got some great investigators that are doing the work to keep Nebraskans safe. And, the nice part about what I do is that we don't have to worry about just our group carrying it on our shoulders. The nice part about the Nebraska Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force is that we have other affiliates across the state that do great work to come alongside us, or in cases we come alongside them to assist. Shout out to some of our longtime affiliates like Kearney Police Department with Dan Warrington, Crete Police Department with Lincoln Morehouse. We've had an incredible relationship with the Douglas County Sheriff's Office over the years, and many others. I could sit here and list off all kinds of people, but it really is ensuring, the key to success is ensuring that you've got the right people there that are all walking in lockstep together to that one common goal. And in this particular case, our common goal is to keep kids safe.
On that theme, I mean, that's obviously a very heavy topic. It's sad in our society that there's even that need to a task force like that, but it is a need, unfortunately. You work, is there anything that you guys do with parents and educators to help educate children of the threats that are out there too? Because, I think back to with our own kids, and they're getting older now, but I think we made a mistake with our kids of giving them access to devices too early. And we had protections in place, but it just seems very overwhelming sometimes to, as a parent, to be able to safeguard. We lock our doors at night, but there's so many other ways now that the bad guys can get access. So I don't know if you work with parents and educators to help educate children on that, and any advice you would have for parents or educators on that.
Absolutely great question. And Brian, I'm glad you brought it up, because keeping kids safe, the educational component is absolutely crucial. And the overall answer is yes, we absolutely do engage with our schools and we engage with our parents. One thing that we're doing through the NIAC is, from a threat-related standpoint, is ensuring that we're reaching out to schools and letting them know that they have a resource through the NIAC that can help them with different types of threats. Aside from the threat of the cell phone and the online offenders that are out there, there's other threats that are facing our schools that give us the opportunity to go in and network with them and highlight certain things that they can take back to their threat assessment teams to keep kids safe. But when we look at the use of the cell phone, it is incredibly important that we get the message out to our kids, to the teachers, and to the parents. So our unit is very active in giving presentations. In fact, I give a lot of presentations myself because it gives me an opportunity to network with different partners across the state in our school sector and then in the private sector and through our parents. So I spend a lot of time doing that, and my team will give presentations too, because a lot of times, especially with parents, it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming to look on a phone and see application after application after application. And these applications just continue to grow and to morph, continuously. So what we try to do to encourage parents is really start to talk to your kids at a young age about online citizenship. We tell the little kids, like kindergartners, we start talking about, being a good online digital citizen or showing good netiquette. That's when we start with the little kids. Obviously sometimes the little kids don't get that message, so we have to talk with teens, tweens and teens, and we're pretty direct in our message. We don't dance around the issue. We let them know what issues are out there and what the risks are, and really put it in their court to make decision. But it really starts with proper communication between parents, between their kids, and then laying out expectations and then holding them to that. There's everyone's a little bit different in their approach. There are certain people out there that would say that we want to create this atmosphere that kids need to be able to come to us and talk to us and not fear that they're going to get into trouble. I'm kind of in the middle on this one. I think that it's important to be able to create an atmosphere where kids are comfortable coming to us, but we still have to come up with that balance of holding kids accountable. And that doesn't mean, obviously we're not going to be mean to them or say hurtful things, but they may lose their phone for a while. And I've, just because I'm a cop, I'm not immune from this. I've had to deal with this with my own kids in setting what the rules are and then holding them to account if they do something that's not good. But one thing that I'll tell you is, and this is why it's so important for us to have this conversation with kids and parents across the state, we have seen a growing increase in the amount of self-production of nude images and videos made by kids, either between other kids or between someone that they don't know. So we've got to have the discussion about, if you put something online, you have no control over it after it's out there. And while there are some tools that help us try to identify those pictures and images and get those back, it's likely that those images and videos are going to be out there for a long time for further exploitation, or just looking at it from a standpoint of getting into a job or a college someday. If those are floating out there, it could limit a person's ability to get future opportunities because those pesky photos keep coming up in some type of investigation. Just last year, we had over 5,000 cyber tips that came into the state, and 1,800 of those were Snapchat leads. And I would say 95% of our Snapchat leads were self-production. We've got to get to a point where our kids are understanding that is risky behavior that comes with consequences. And I am a big believer in education. If kids know that up front, I think that they're less likely to, well, I won't say less likely to, but they'll think maybe before they post that picture. Yeah.
That leads into a little bit, another question I had was, where are the biggest threats that you see coming from? Again, I have 3 teenagers right now, so I hear the stories. Their friends, they all know people who have been impacted by this. And some of it's a self-production stuff. Is that the biggest threat you see right now, or is it other folks who are grooming, and are they local, or is it an out-of-state threat? Is it all over?
Yeah. All of that. And it really is a combination of things. When I talk to people about sextortion or kids posting themselves, there's 3 different areas that I kind of focus on when I'm talking to parents. And they're all areas that further discussion and the use of privacy settings on the phone can help eliminate, but you have to know about it, and you have to be willing to do it. So by that, I mean, just about every applications out there has some fairly robust privacy settings that will assist a parent or a child in locking down that account to ensure that people from the outside, people that they don't know, aren't going to engage them and try to get them to talk and engage in that grooming behavior that you talked about. Because when a child's application is open for anyone to see it, their risk goes up astronomically of chances of being exploited. So there's 3 areas of sextortion that I will mention briefly. Number one, over the years, we've always seen sextortion or child enticement for sexual gratification. And over the years, that's typically middle to late age males targeting young females, anywhere from between the ages of 12 and 15. And they're using grooming activity to engage the trust of that child. And then when they have the trust of that child, they will flip that conversation and start asking them to do unspeakable things. And then once they get that first image, then they can really ramp up all of the threats and the coercion to keep those images coming. And, online predators are really, really good about looking for vulnerable kids. So they're looking for kids that maybe aren't getting a lot of attention at home. Maybe they have a lower socioeconomic status, so there is no going out on the weekends, and there's a lot of time spent. Maybe they're lower functioning. All of those risk factors, online predators look for in being able to groom the right kid for them. So that's, when I go out and train parents and train teachers, we really focus in on making sure that, extra talking and extra services are provided to any kids that might be at a higher risk. Then, over the years, we've seen sextortion morph into this financial sextortion, where kids are being targeted specifically for money. And what we found is that bad actors in the Ivory Coast and Nigeria will target young males between the ages of 15 and 17 specifically. And the individual that's talking to them will disrobe first, and they think they're talking to a very attractive female, and so they start thinking impulsively. And when they're asked to reciprocate, they do, and then the conversation immediately stops, and they're given a list of their friends with a caption that says, "Give me $1,500 now, or we're going to share all of these or all of your pictures with all your family and friends." Well, when we first started to see this type of coercion, we were seeing ransoms paid. We were seeing kids that were disengaging from their families, and in some cases, a few cases across the country, kids were committing suicide because they just didn't know how to get out of that situation. Well, I do think that education has come a long ways, because we are seeing a decrease in those now. We still see a lot of them, but we are seeing a decrease. And I think that we're starting to get the word out that if you do make this mistake and you do encounter this, simply shut down the conversation, stop talking to them, block them if you started talking to them on an offline chat or texting, and then just walk away, because they're likely to go on to the next person. They're strictly in it for money. They're not in it for sexual gratification. So that's been the best strategy there. And then lately, in fact, we just put out a product yesterday on this from the NIAC. We are still seeing radical violent extremists online that are focusing on talking to the kids to get them to self-harm or to commit suicide. Again, same types of grooming behaviors, but their pure goal behind this is to create civil unrest and just in chaos. I
mean, so some of the stuff you mentioned is heartbreaking, and I imagine you see and hear really hard, challenging stuff. How do you cope? What do you do to cope, I guess?
Well, for me, like I said early, I've always had strong faith, and my Christian faith has always given me hope that whatever happens on this earth, number one, will be accounted for someday, and number two, that I can rest knowing that, my work will be rewarded someday, maybe not in this life, but the next. So that's always gives me peace. But, as far as coping here, and dealing with stress, I like hunting and fishing. I've gotten, one of my investigators got me into metal detecting, and I just find that to be fascinating, finding old things in the ground.
What's the best thing you found?
The neatest thing that I found was a 1912 silver dime in the front of an old abandoned house. To me, that was it. You can feel the history when you start digging things up. And I found a lot of old trading tokens from, back in the early 1900s where, trading tokens were given as a form of barter in some of our small towns across Nebraska, which is fascinating to me.
Yeah.
I garden. I'm involved with my family. In fact, I serve as the 4-H council president and the president of the extension board for Odo County 4-H. I also am the and this is a big one here. This is huge part of my life. I'm the FFA poultry judging coach.
Okay.
And we kind of joked about that back when I was in the leadership training in the fall. But all of those things help me cope. Because at the end of the day, you still have to go home. You still have to be a father. You have to be a husband, and try to put some of this behind me. But I do find it's easier for my wife and my family because we're both kind of in the same business, with her in the Department of Corrections and myself in the patrol. I think that we understand sometimes the challenges that we see, so that helps cope too.
So, with again, going back to your career with the Nebraska State Patrol, lots of shoes that you have filled. Someone who's interested in a career with the Nebraska State Patrol or law enforcement in general, what advice would you give them if there's a young person or maybe even someone who's just looking to change careers? What would be some advice that you would give them?
Well, for a person just coming out of high school, to be certified in the state of Nebraska as a law enforcement officer, you have to be 21. So I would always tell a kid that is an aspiring law enforcement officer, go get your education or go to the military. Go get an accomplishment under your belt. Go do something that causes you to work and to gain something at the end. That will make sense when you get into the academy, because the academy, it's doable. Obviously, there's many of us that have gone through that every year, but if you're in a situation where you haven't accomplished a lot, it might be a trying task. So I always tell people, go get your education, because number one, you can never take that away. Go get it while you're young, because I see a lot of people that do get degrees later in life, and it is a struggle because they're working a full-time job, they're raising a family. And I think that a lot of those people would say, hey, I wish I would have got this when I had a chance with not as many obligations. I would tell, get that degree, go to the military, and then come and be a trooper. We need troopers, and we need the right type of person. And by that, I mean people that are of high moral integrity, that are willing to put themselves above reproach. And it kind of goes back to a saying that I heard General Norman Schwarzkopf say one time. We look for those that have character and competence. And character and competences are obviously will lead to leadership later. But it's so important to have those qualities now, because even as a trooper, you are still looked to as a leader. You are looked to as a leader in your local community, by others around you. That individual may not be the colonel in making all the decisions in the agency, but they certainly are responsible for everything that they're doing that evening, the safety and well-being of the people that they're serving. So it's important to be a person of high moral integrity and have the competence to back that up.
Are there any particular accomplishments in your career that really stand out that you're extra proud of?
Well, I think for me, I've always felt like any position that I've held or left, I've always felt that I've left it better than I found it. And I've think those that know me well know that I'm not always right, but I'm always willing to try and to work hard. I think some of the greatest accomplishments, I think, come through with just cases that I've worked over the years where people have been impacted for the rest of their lives too. And I can remember a case that I worked back in 2011, and it was pretty impactful for me. It would have been impactful for everyone that was a part of the case. But there was a young girl, her name was Kara Wilson, out in western Nebraska, and she'd went missing. And to make a long story short, her stepdad ended her life. And, some of the darkest cases that I've ever worked, I've seen the most light in our agency, because to see individuals in law enforcement come together and support each other for one common goal of finding that little girl and bringing her home. And in this instance, we weren't able to do that, but still seeing the level of professionalism that was displayed and the amount of heart and emotion that went into that case will stick with me the rest of my life. And when you go back to the question of coping, that's it, is thinking back to how we were able to work together as a team and really connect with one another to get through a really hard time. It'll never bring her back, but it certainly allows me to appreciate the life that I've had, the life that my kids have been able to have, and it helps me to appreciate all those around me through the years that have dedicated their lives to keep kids safe and to work together to get through those hard times.
Anything else you'd like to add that we haven't covered yet about your career?
Oh no! Like I said, we could sit here and talk for a whole week, and
I think I could listen to your stories for the whole week.
Yeah. So. No, I appreciate that. It's always fun to sit around and talk, and that's one thing I'll tell kids is that if you want to have a career where you can sit around at a family event or sit around at a high school reunion and you want to tell stories, you'll have plenty of them to tell, and everyone likes to hear them. They're always kind of fun.
Yeah. And make a huge difference for Nebraskans.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then we'll move into our famous hot seat. That's
sure.
Not really much of a hot seat, but
they're very famous. They go viral all the time on the internet.
All right. The first one is, if you could only eat one food for the rest of your life, what would you choose?
Fried chicken. No hesitation.
That was a quick answer.
Homemade. Okay. Mrs. Lovelace makes the best fried chicken. So yeah, and my doctor would tell me that that's probably not the best for me. But, yeah, absolutely.
Good eat them. Yeah. What's a song that always puts you in a good mood?
Oh boy, I read through your hot button topics a little bit, and
we got some surprise ones in there for you.
Some surprise ones there that always puts me in a good mood. Yeah, I'll tell you, all my exes live in Texas, and I'll tell you the reason why. There was a video out there of this little boy. He was probably 7-8 years old, and he was singing in front of his church, and he was singing all the Bible verses, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and he went through all of them, and he did flawlessly. And at the end of it, he breaks out into, all my exes live in Texas. And I tell you, his mother couldn't get up there fast enough. So anytime I hear that song come up on that old song come up, I think about that kid, and that does make me laugh.
That's great.
I'm going to think about that now too when I hear it.
And I encourage you to look it up.
I'll have
if
to.
You just look up little boy singing all my exes live in Texas or whatever that is, you'll find it. It is hilarious.
I'll have to look for it. Do you prefer movies or TV?
Well, actually, I do enjoy both. I like watching series that I haven't seen before. I like watching series that I have seen. I'm a big fan of the Andy Griffith Show. I wish policing was still that way, to be honest with you. There's a lot of good parallels that we can draw from that. But I would say probably more TV. I spend a lot of time watching the news, especially in the work that I'm doing now. It seems like news is our business and keeping up with what's going on. But yeah, I like a lot of TV, but I tell you, I like movies too. In fact, one of my favorite actors of all time, Gene Hackman, died the other day.
Oh yeah, that guy was so talented.
He was good. And I loved him in Hoosiers. I loved him playing the tough FBI guy in Mississippi Burning. He's just got there's just parts in there. I know that you had one other hot topic is, what's one movie that you could watch over and over and over, and he plays in them. Unforgiven, Hoosiers. I could watch those movies every day.
All right. If you could instantly master a new skill, what would it be?
Playing the banjo.
Oh, that's
a good one.
If I could do that, I think I'd have so much fun because I love banjo music, and I know that if anyone that knows me hears me say this, they're going to start making fun of me from being from Missouri and all that stuff. But I love banjo music. I love bluegrass. It really captures everything that's good about down home. And I think that, at the end of the day, from all the things that I've seen, over the years and been involved in, I still long for being at home at the end of it. And that banjo would sure make it sweet coming home.
And Steve Martin said it's impossible to play a sad song on the banjo.
That's true.
Yeah. All right. What's your favorite place you've been on vacation?
Favorite place on vacation? Well, probably DC. I really enjoy going out there. I know some people don't like all the hustle and bustle, but if you get down on the National Mall and can go experience a lot of the monuments that are there, especially the first time I ever went to Arlington, every individual that says anything negative about our military needs to go stand in Arlington and reconsider what they're saying. Freedom of speech, I get that. But I think there's sometimes we just need to be respectful and understand that everything that we have, the ability for us to sit here and talk today is because of those men and women that are laying in that ground up there. And it's humbling to see. And anytime that I get to go, I always get something from DC looking at the monuments and being able to consider the sacrifices that have been made. And because of the position that I sit in, a lot of our conferences are in DC, so I get an opportunity to go there. So, but we took our family there in 2018 and probably should have had the boys a little bit readier to walk than we did because everyone had shin splints by the end of it. But yeah, that was probably my most favorite. And the times that we had taken trips to the mountains, that was always fun too.
All right. Any final advice you would give to someone interested in pursuing a career with the state of Nebraska?
I had an opportunity yesterday to go out and provide some training with one of my analysts to the Nebraska State Patrol recruits that we currently have. And one thing that I would say to anyone that's getting on is, know what you're getting yourself into, but also know the type of state that you're joining, that you're getting into as well. This is a great state with great people. And I told the camp yesterday, I said, I remember sitting in your chairs 24 years ago and at days wondering why in the world that I was subjecting myself to being yelled at, to do push-ups, to do set-ups, to do a ton of tests and a ton of work and run a ton of miles. I can remember having those, and then all of a sudden I blinked and 24 years has passed. I told them yesterday the juice is worth the squeeze. There's so much good that's going to come out of what they're working on now that I said this is just a very blip on the radar for your career. So I would tell people if they want to be challenged, if they want to have a rewarding career that is something to be proud of, come join the State Patrol. And here's the deal. You don't even have to join the sworn side. There's plenty of aspects to the State Patrol that are non-sworn that do amazing work. I'm telling you, I've got a group of analysts in the NIAC and stationed across the state too that do threat-related work, and I'm telling you, they're doing unbelievable work and finding things out about criminals that are assisting in cases and leading to people being rescued. So you don't have to be a trooper or a sworn officer to make a difference. We've got people all the time that are making differences in our civilian roles, and honestly, we couldn't do our job without our civilian position. So there's all kinds of ways to advance in the patrol, and that's the nice thing about the patrol too. Even on the sworn side, if you get tired of being a uniformed officer, you can go to an investigations. You can be a part of the SWAT team. You can go work at the training academy. You can be a dog handler. And same thing in civilian work. If you don't like working in the NIAC, you can go over and work in our criminal identification division, or you can go work in our HR division or accounting division. There's just a lot of ways to expand, and we've got so many good people that allow us to grow into our positions and to become leaders as we progress through our careers.
It's great advice. And I think one of the things I also love about the state is there's just so much opportunity to make a difference.
Oh, there is. Because I'm just talking about the State Patrol, but there are other ways. I mean, other agencies. I had the opportunity to go through the Governor's Leadership Academy this past fall, and I was impressed with just the amount of other agencies that are out there that I didn't realize. Banking and finance, Veterans Affairs. I'd never met anyone from those areas, but that opportunity gave me an opportunity to connect with them and to understand, the other side of things, the other divisions in the state. So I found that to be most helpful.
Yeah, we're fortunate on this podcast to get to learn about all of these cool things.
Absolutely.
So, well, we really appreciate your time today. It's been great to get to know you a little bit and learn about your the great work that you're doing for the citizens of Nebraska. We thank you for your service and just, again, your time being here today. For our listeners, if you want to check out our great career opportunities, go to statejobs.nebraska.gov and click on Find a State Job. While you are there, you can also find links to our Nebraska State Jobs social media, including Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. We'd love to have you follow us to learn even more about our great careers. If you want to learn more about the State Patrol and its career opportunities, go to statepatrol.nebraska.gov and click Careers. We also encourage you to check out their social media platforms, which can be found on the State Patrol's website. They're definitely worth the follow. There's also a lot of great content on the Nebraska Department of Administrative Services YouTube channel, including this podcast. So make sure to search for us there and hit that subscribe button so you're notified when future podcast episodes drop. On behalf of our guest, Lieutenant Lovelace, my co-host Brian, and myself, I want to thank you for tuning in and learning more about the great careers here in The Good Life.